The Top 50 Atari ST Side-Scroll Action Platform Shooters, Part 2, coming up next. In this series, we explore and count down the top 50 scrolling platform games on the Atari ST that use guns as their primary weapon. Even if a game contains no platforms other than the ground, we're still going to consider it for this list. Some of these games might also contain other types of gameplay on levels and possibly some non-gun fighting. But for the most part, we have separated the Elvira the Arcade game fantasy-style platformers and the Darkman platform beat-em-ups to their own individual series. In this way, we can cover many more games and explore the breadth of the ST's library. In Part 2, we're going to cover the games that scored in the 40 to 31 range in the top 50. I created this top 50 by playing as many of these types of games as I could find and scoring them on a 0 to 300 scale, based on a combination of my review, the average magazine score if I could find them, and the Atari Mania audience score. If there were no magazine reviews for a game, I gave it the same score as the AtariMania.com audience score, or used a score from another platform. Because of this, my choices didn't always come out where I thought they would, especially when we reached the final top 10, but we're not even close to that yet. Only 4 percentage points separated all 10 of these games in the 40 to 31 range, so most likely they could be taken in any order, but I definitely have my favorites, as you'll see as we go forward. Let's get started with a simple, fun, but ultimately frustrating 8-bit style shooter. Number 40 is Rocket Racer by DP, date unknown. I can't find the origins of this game, but yesterday I saw a great Kim Justice video on the Arcadia Amiga-powered arcade system, and one of the games had the same name. It kind of looks similar to this, but there's probably no relation between the two. Rocket Racer is a very 8-bit looking exploration shooter where you need to collect crystals while running and flying a jetpack. Rocket Racer received 204 out of 300 points, or 68%. This game shows that there are a bunch of games all massed at the 68% zone that could be interchangeable. Hawkeye, number 40 from the last video, is superior to this game, but because I had only a single low review for that and none for this, using my fudged math, this ended up beating Hawkeye by a tiny margin. In any case, whether my rating system is flawed or not, here we are. The Good. I really like the beginning sampled music. This one I considered for the horizontal shooter video, but it lacked enough shooting to be a shoot 'em up and required a little bit too much running and collecting to be a pure shooter. Mediocre. The graphics and sounds leave a lot to be desired. The Bad. The difficulty. I find it far too difficult to collect crystals without hitting the ground. I do like this game and its 8-bit graphics. The scrolling Jetman style and shooting action are pretty good, but a lot is lost with the difficulty. Number 39 is Dark Fusion, a 1989 Gremlin graphics release. Dark Fusion is a single-player, side-scrolling space shoot 'em up with 4 levels, each divided into 3 zones: the combat zone, the alien zone, and the flight zone. In the combat zone, the player starts out as a warrior in a spacesuit, shooting and dodging aliens and collecting power-ups. To get to the flight zone, you must first clear 2 alien zones, complete the combat zone, and then fight your way to a fusion pod to become a spaceship and fly through to the next level. Holding down the fire button charges up your weapon for a bigger blast, a little bit like R-Type, and the spacebar activates collected power-ups. Dark Fusion received 205 out of 300 points, or 63.8%. Atari ST User Magazine liked the game, giving it 70%, saying that it was well designed but the difficulty was set too high. The good. The graphics, sounds, and R-Type style weapon are all good ideas, but you must find the jumping power-up to make any progress in the game. The mediocre. Dark Fusion's fun, saturated colors make it appear to be from 1987, not 1989, and the gameplay, at least in the first zone, is less like a traditional run and gun and more like a running version of a horizontal shooter, with formations of enemy to destroy and a constant barrage of bullets headed your way. Cheats, at least for me, were a must to get any place in the game. To access the other 3 sections, it's essential to find that jumping power-up, which I never found until the 3rd playthrough. The bad. As you might be able to tell, I put a cheat on to make the video. That's because the jumping and control are too tight, making the game very difficult to play, and I got stuck trying to figure out the first level. Even after I found a way to get to the section where you must kill the boss, the game didn't give me any feedback that I had accomplished anything, so after shooting it for a few minutes of tired joystick button finger action, I moved on. There's a good game here, I just need to find it. Next up is number 38, Navy Moves, from 1988 by Dominic. Navy Moves is a one-dimensional, side-scrolling shooter, the sequel to the poorly reviewed Army Moves, which didn't make it into the top 50. It has the same gameplay and style as that game, but completely different activities. The first part of Navy Moves is a tedious side-scrolling contest where you need to jump your small boat over bombs. It's frustrating at first, but once you get the pattern down, you might be able to complete it pretty quickly. I never could, so I jumped to part 2 in the selection menu. The second part is more of a traditional flip-screen action-adventure run-and-gun shooter where you must find codes to open doors and complete puzzles while picking up extra weapons and blasting the enemy. Navy moves received 207 out of 300 points, or 69%. While the Games Machine magazine called both the ST and Amiga versions tough, but worth the effort, the other multi-format magazine to review the ST version, CV&G, recommended it only to masochists. ST Review magazine commented that there was a lot of game on the disc that very few players will ever get to see because of the difficulty. The good. There's a kernel of a good game in both levels, and the graphics are pretty well done. The mediocre. The animations and sound are pretty decent, but not earth-shattering. The bad. In level 1, you have to keep starting over until you find a buoy, and it becomes tedious very quickly. In level 2, the enemies seem to appear out of nowhere. Navy moves breaks almost every single good game design principle, the least of which, it's not very fun. In number 37, Lorna, a 1990 Topo-Soft release, you play as the bikini-clad namesake in a game based on a popular Spanish comic book. You must walk left and fight various mutant monsters with guns and hand-to-hand combat. And well, that's about all I can figure out about this game, released in Spain and possibly elsewhere for the ST, Amiga, and other micros. Lorna received 209 out of 300, or 69.5% of the possible points. I could not find any ST reviews of this Spanish title, but I did find a couple non-English Amiga reviews where they liked the sounds and the graphics, but thought the gameplay got boring pretty quickly. The good. The graphics and the animation. Lorna is very well crafted graphically, with her hair flowing and all of the parts a 14-year-old ST or Amiga game player was ogling at in 1990. The mediocre. The gameplay speed and control. The bad. The game design. It's boring no matter how small and non-existent Lorna's clothes are. I ran out of ammo far too quickly, and when I finally got to a second enemy, I was shot and killed while he was just coming onto the screen. Cheap deaths to make difficulty are not good game design traits. Number 36 is Trantor, The Last Stormtrooper, a 1988 US Gold release where you are on an alien ship that is about to explode and need to find 8 single-letter codes, rearrange them into a passcode, and then enter them into a console. After doing this, supposedly, Trantor is to be transported to an alien complex. Lockers can be opened to find upgrades, ammo, and health, and computer terminals give clues and codes. Trantor received 209 out of 300, or 69.5% of the possible points, tied with Lorna. There is a frantic nature to Trantor that keeps me thrilled, at least for a little while. ST Action gave Trantor 36%, saying Trantor is neither graphically nor orally outstanding, and to be truthful, it's a rather weak game. The good, Trantor won't win any awards in any category, but the intro, sounds, and shooting action, before you run out of ammo that is, are decent to good. It was good enough for me to try 4 or 5 times to see how far I could get. The mediocre. Trantor's graphics and sounds are a direct port from the Amstrad CPC version, but they are slicker and a little bit more impressive than the 8-bitter. The bad. The game design. It gets boring really quickly, like most of these games. There isn't a lot of what I thought initially sounded like it would be more engrossing. Trantor is fun for a bit, and the upgrades help, but it's a pretty boring shooter, unfortunately. Number 35, Beverly Hills Cop, a 1990 licensed release by Tynesoft, features 4 distinct sub-games, each which can be practiced from the main screen in my 8-bit chip hard drive version. First, Axel visits a warehouse to shoot some bad guys in a Green Beret influenced sequence, which is the level we'll be focusing on here. The second level involves hard driving style 3D driving. The third is an awkward 3/4 perspective mouse-driven run and gun. Although the fourth section is not really part of this countdown, the first-person shooter action where you can use the Z and X keys to rotate left and right and the joystick to move and fire is quite good and recommended. Beverly Hills Cop received 210 out of 300 points, making it the first 70% or more game on this countdown. ST Format magazine was not nearly as impressed, giving it only 49%, commenting, "The game doesn't have the speed of action or the variety of graphics to even sustain your interest past the first few levels." The good. The first level's scrolling and shooting are enjoyable, and I really like the implementation of the graphics, scrolling, and shooting actions. The mediocre. The sounds overall are pleasant, with a nice chiptune and some samples. They are better than some ST games, but not the best by far. The bad. You can't jump at all, which seems odd, and the variety on level 1 leaves a lot to be desired. Number 34, Soldier of Light, was published by Ace and the Edge teams and released in 1988. I had high hopes for this coin-op conversion because I enjoyed the Darius Plus and Alien Syndrome ports by the same team. You are tasked with visiting a number of planets and wiping out the evil alien hordes. That's about all you need to know. There are some fly and shoot levels in this one also, like some of the other games we have covered in this series. I played with an invincible cheat on and chose a level I haven't played before for this video. This game is no Turrican, but it certainly is one of the better pure run and gun platformers in a true sense of the genre we have seen so far. Soldier of Light received 210.33 out of 300, or basically tied with Beverly Hills Cop at 70%. The German ASM magazine liked everything about Soldier of Light except the sound, giving it 10s in all categories, but the sound only an 8. The Good, finally, a worthy arcade port in this series. It's all run and gun and pick up power-ups and fight monsters and aliens. It's quite well done and fun to play. The Mediocre, the sounds and the graphics are very 8-bit and more CPC and C64 than they should be. The Bad, it's pretty difficult, but that's what ST and Amiga arcade ports were like for the most part. Developers forgot that players were not tasked with dropping quarters in to keep playing. Use a cheat and you'll get through all 3 planets and have a blast. Number 33, Gremlins 2, the new batch, 1990 by Elite, is a simple flick screen beat 'em up, shoot 'em up, where you control Billy from the film and try to destroy gremlins that have taken over a building by assembling a weapon that shines sunlight onto the baddies. You start with a flashlight or torch and buy new weapons and collect power-ups along the way. If you collect 5 special objects on the 5 game levels, supposedly you get to create the gremlin vaporizing sunlight super weapon. Gizmo. Gremlins 2 received 211.66 out of 300, or 71%. I might have violated my criteria for this list by adding this game, because you don't shoot a gun, but use a flashlight, and I think I was throwing bread at the gremlins part of the time. But I also think this would not fit on a list with Gods, Harlequin, and Elvira the Arcade game either. They could have improved this game immensely by just giving Billy a gun. ST Format Magazine gave Gremlins 2 70%, commenting that the game is so difficult that to complete a level you need to memorize the entire thing. The Good. This game has really well made graphics, sounds, and production value, and it could very well have been much higher on this list, except the Mediocre. The scrolling, or lack of it, is pretty lackluster. But the Amiga and C64 also had no scrolling, so it's just a pure game design choice. So why is it not higher on this list? The Bad. Eventually I memorized the first few screens, but when you die, you start all over again, and the flick screens leave you open to far too many cheap deaths. When I played with a trainer, I had much more fun, but I shouldn't have to cheat to have fun with a game like this. Number 32, Alien Storm, a 1991 US Gold release, is an ST coin-op conversion of the 1990 Sega coin-op and is technically impressive in many ways. It uses the Timer B to split the color palette and put 24 plus colors on the 16 color ST screen, but developer Tiertex could have done a much better job in 1991 at making the ST and possibly the STE version play much better than it does. As a game, it's basically an alien shooting version of Golden Axe, with a lot of cool weapons and effects. You control one of the 3 main characters with the joystick and the fire button to use your main weapon, and hit the spacebar to fire your alternative ordnance. Alien Storm received 215 out of 300, or 72% of the possible points. GamesX Magazine, my favorite UK magazine, gave Alien Storm 3 out of 5 stars, saying that the game would most likely only appeal to fans of the arcade original. The good. I think everything about this conversion is pretty good. It's one of the better Sega conversions to the ST. The graphics are the best part, and the sounds are pretty good, with some tinny chiptunes mixed in with arcade effects. The mediocre. The control. Just like Golden Axe on the ST, Amiga, and C64, a single button with spacebar is no match for the arcade action, and is a little unresponsive to control. Still, I had fun with it. The bad. The GamesX magazine reviewer probably said it best. The monotonous gameplay is very close to the arcade, which I didn't particularly like anyway. I did like the arcade game a bit more than he did, but yes, the game gets repetitive quickly. We've definitely made it into the territory of games that I would play a lot more now, even if this one is only good for about 15 minutes at a time. Number 31 is NARC, a 1990 Ocean port of a Williams coin-op that I almost bypassed completely because the port from the Amiga to the ST didn't adjust the color palette, so the ST looks far too dark. How did this pass QA in engineering? But a few tweaks to the brightness and it works fine. So what is this exactly? Through 12 levels of manic gameplay, you are a police narcotics officer armed to the teeth, tasked with arresting or shooting all the baddies sent to stop you from reaching Mr. Big, the drug lord. Your second weapon, a nifty rocket launcher, is not fired with the keyboard, but by holding down the fire button a little longer than usual and letting go. A very good choice.
You're busted. You're busted.
NARC received 215 out of 300 points, or 72%, tied with Alien Storm. The more I play this one, the more I think it would be much higher on the list if the colors weren't so dark. Technically, it's very well put together and puts most Atari ST scrolling beat-em-ups and arcade shooter ports to shame. The coding team also did Double Dragon 3, which we'll be covering in the beat-em-up series, along with Judge Dredd, which we covered last time, and Final Blow, a boxing game we'll cover in the one-on-one fighting game series. I look forward to seeing how their skills were utilized in these games. ST Action Magazine only gave NARC 64%, commenting, "Even the most bloodthirsty game player could tire of killing eventually." The good. This game is silly fun. The graphics are good, but a little too dark, and the gameplay is just basically shooting dudes and firing a rocket launcher. It's dumb fun and very well made. The mediocre. The sampled sound is just okay, but really repetitive. I generally like it overall though. The bad. There isn't much gameplay here. It's one of the better ones on this list for picking up and playing for a few minutes. Also, I don't like shooting dogs. Okay, that's all for this time. But this is getting fun. A much higher percentage of games in this video are candidates for me, and you guys of course, to pick up and dig into. As you can see, because the ST's library is so vast, we are discovering games that include other level types for genres to explore further down the line, making this not just a countdown, but a wide, vast library exploration that will lead to more videos and more great games to cover. Until next time, when we'll go through numbers 30 to 21, have fun exploring the library of your favorite genre on your favorite machine in the vertical blank.
We were children of the Silicon Revolution, an X generation conscripted to fight the console and home computer wars. A product of an analog 70s childhood, we came of digital age in the 80s, believing we could affect the world 8 bits at a time. Armed with joysticks, full-stroke keyboards, Jolt Cola, and MTV haircuts, we proceeded into the vertical blank. There, we stayed up late at night, devising incantations from D&D rulebooks and beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code. Video games were the match, and programming was the fuse, as the infinite possibilities of the digital world exploded into the internet age to come. We are Generation Atari.
Into the vertical blank.